Hello everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. As you all know that myself Pratibha SR. In today's session, I'm going to discuss about the course called Research Methodology and Intellectual Property Rights, and the course code is BRMK 557. And the topic I'm going to explain is critical and creative reading. Now, firstly, let us go through the contents. The content involves introduction, what does need to be done for the preparing critical reading, and the patterns of the text, and the difference between reading and critical reading, and finally, critical and creative reading. Firstly, let us go through the introduction. In introduction, we are going to study what is the actual definition and meaning of the critical and creative thinking. The critical and creative thinking involves the students thinking broadly and deeply, using their skills, behaviors, and dispositions such as reason, logic, resourcefulness, imagination, and innovation in all learning areas about school, in their lives beyond the school. And this involves the thinking out of the box and coming up with innovative solutions. The core skills, the they are the key skills for critical and creative thinking, which include analysis, brainstorming, lateral thinking, interpretation, and problem solving. Students need to approach problems with curiosity, risk taking, and etc. The creative reading, it requires thinking, imagination, and emergence of ideas, which are products of the reader's thoughts. The reader gives something of himself. Now, let us see what does need to be done to prepare for critical reading. There are two steps for preparing to read critically. The first one is self reflect. What experiences, assumptions, knowledge, and perspectives do you bring to the text? What biases might you have? Are you able to keep an open mind and consider other points of view? The second one is read to understand. Examine the text and context. Who is the author? Who is the publisher? Where and when was it written? What kind of text is it? Scheme the text. What is the topic? What are the main ideas? Resolve confusion. Look up unfamiliar words or terms in the dictionaries or glossaries. Go over difficult pages to clarify them. Now let us see the patterns of the text. Analysis means looking at the parts of something to do and looking that those patterns. Your critical thinking skills will be engaged in analyzing the argument the author is making. What is the thesis or oral theory? What are the supporting points that create the arguments? How do they relate to each other? How do they relate to the thesis? What are the examples used as evidence for supporting points? How do they relate to the points they support to each other, to the thesis? What techniques of persuasion are used which appeals to emotion, reason, authority, etc.? What rhetorical strategies are used? Example like definition, explanation, description, narration, and elaboration, argumentation, and evaluation. And finally, what modes of analysis are used. Now let us see the difference between reading and critical reading. In the purpose of reading is to get the basic graphs of the text, and the purpose of critical reading is to form the judgments about how a text works. The activity of reading involves observing or understanding. The activity of critical reading involves analyzing, interpreting, and evaluating. In reading, we have to mainly focus on what a text says, and in critical reading, we have to focus on what a text does and means. The questions in reading will be: what is the text saying? What information can I get out of it? In critical reading, the questions can be arised like this: how does the text works? What are all the choices made? The patterns that result. Direction. In reading directs with the text, and the critical reading it directs against the text. Next, the response given by reading is restatement and summary, and in critical reading, description, interpretation, evaluation. Critical and creative reading. Reading a research paper is a critical process. The reader should not be under the assumption that the reported result or arguments are correct. Being suspicious and asking appropriate questions in the fact is a good thing. Is there a logical flow to paper, or there is a flow in the reasoning? This need to be ascertained apart from the relevance and the importance of the work by carefully reading. Use of judgmental approaches and boldness to make judgments is needed while reading. Flexibility to discard previous erroneous judgments is also critical. It is important to ascertain whether the data presented in paper is right data to sustain the argument that was made in paper, and whether the data was gathered and interpreted in a correct manner. It is also important to decipher whether some other data set would have been more compelling. Critical reading is relatively easy. It is relatively easy to critically read to find the mistakes than to read it so as to find the good ideas in the paper. Reading creatively is harder, and it requires a positive approach in such. In creative reading, the idea is to actively look for other applications like interesting generalizations or extended work which the authors might have been missed. Are there modifications that may throw up important practical challenges? One must be able to decipher properly if one would like to start researching an extended part of this, and what should be done immediate next aspect to for the focus upon. Thank you.